Kaguya-sama Love is War has got to be one of my favorite shows as a love-starved weeb. Between reading the manga and watching the anime, one of the most hilarious moments I've actually watched was Shirogane's rap. And if you guys don't remember it, I'll play a little bit of it.
私は知りたい男同士の行為応援するべき止めるべき悩みドキドキドキドキドキ藤原さんは何を言ってるの
Okay, let's set aside Shirogane's mad flow and Chika's out-of-the-pocket comment for now. Aside from this song being an absolute banger, if you stop and read the lyrics, it's actually deeper than you think, and it has a message that can be found in all of Akasaka's works. Shirogane says, "It was you who said it. You have to act to be loved." Shirogane here is answering a crucial question. Can you be loved for who you truly are? Now, this sounds super deep, but it's a really interesting question, and I think it's this theme of love and lies that almost drives the plot forward and adds so much more depth to this romantic comedy. So, do you have to act in order to be loved? That is the question we are going to look at today, and to explore the meaning behind Shirogane's words in his epic BL rap, we have to jump to the Christmas movies. So, ladies and gentlemen, go grab your Santa hat and a drink, and we'll get started. Now, to get you guys going, I'll ask you a question by showing you a scene, and I want your opinion on it. At the end of the show, Kaguya and Shirogane had this following interaction.
私はあなたを見せて欲しくて自分を見せたのに
何の話だよ
だってそうでしょ好きな相手には自分を見て欲しいものじゃないですか
好きな相手って
好きな人に隠し事なんてしたくない全てを分かち合って全てを分かり合えたらそんな素敵なことはないと思うでしょ私は自分の弱いところを見せたわ分かり合いたいからだから次は会長の弱いところも見せてほしいって
言わんとしてることもわかるそれができたら理想的だろうなとも思うだけど俺の意見は逆だ好きだからこそ弱い部分は見せられないものじゃないか自分の弱い部分を見せて幻滅されたらとかもし相手の許せない要素を自分が持ってたらとか思うだろうそれが好きな相手であればあるほど余計見せられない
So, what did you guys think of these two opinions? Kaguya argues that if you love someone, you'd want to not hide anything from them. However, Shirogane argues the opposite, that the more you love someone, the less you can show them. This is an interesting concept, and let me tell you why. But first, let me explain to you about personas. So what are personas? It's kind of like a personality you create, a version that appears with different aspects of yourself. Think about it. You probably act differently around your family or between different friend groups. It's best to think about personas as a kind of mask you wear. And why do we wear this mask? Well, it's a bit complicated, but if you guys have been here for long enough for my Code Geass video, check it out. Lelouch actually summarizes this pretty well. And he says, we lie because we want something. And this is pretty true. In ordinary situations, it might be you act differently because you want to fit in or be liked. All of this is a persona that you create. Everybody has a persona, and this idea is pushed in Kaguya-sama. Both Shirogane and Kaguya put up a persona, not only to the public, but to each other as well. And why? Because they both want to be loved. Shirogane has the persona of a perfect student council president. He has a charming charisma and seemingly is able to do anything well. He's recognized for his achievements. However, deep inside, he's more or less the opposite. Despite his appearances, Shirogane is actually a pretty incompetent person who has no natural talent in anything he does. And throughout the show, he tries to hide this incompetence to get Chika to teach him lessons, which has become a running joke at this point. Kaguya's persona is also the same. After she fell in love with Shirogane, she slowly began to change herself. This is almost symbolized by her ribbon. She took more interest in becoming more cute looking and throughout time has learned to be this adorable tsundere that we all love. However, we all know that Kaguya, as a member of the Shinomiya family, is someone who has been taught to be cold and calculating, to use people and discard them when they have no more value. Both Kaguya and Shirogane try to hide away this negative part of themselves and pretend like they're someone they're not. And it's only natural to hide the bad parts of yourself, but the real question is, to what extent? If I were to give you an example, this would be like something similar to plastic surgery. I'm sure most of us would be fine with your partner having a little bit, however, would be bothered to find them, for example, 98% plastic. And of course, we slowly learn the consequences of showing your true self. This is after Kaguya turned into the SSR Kaguya-chan. During her sleep, she has this meeting within her brain between the three versions of herself, which is quite literally a representation of her personas. And it was in this very courtroom that we are introduced to her two main personas. We'll call her regular Kaguya and Ice Kaguya. Now, Ice Kaguya blames the others for being stupid with that French kiss and ultimately decides to take over to get a kiss for herself. Now, what happens after is, of course, the usual shenanigans start, and Kaguya with her ice personality tries to get a kiss from Shirogane, but this time in her own way. This method, however, comes off as more standoff-ish, more harsh and more cold. Of course, this method is very fitting for her ice personality. Although we as the audience know what she's trying to do and find it cute, to Shirogane it creates more and more misunderstandings. And we see this. Kaguya tries to press with her methods, and the more she does, the more Shirogane shows his incompetence, which Kaguya immediately finds to be almost a turnoff. And we can see the trigger-inducing words of This continues until finally Shirogane collapses due to the stress. This part perfectly captures what Shirogane and Kaguya were fearing all along, and why they had to hide from each other. Kaguya forgot that her ice persona causes people harm, and have traits that Shirogane would ultimately not like. Kaguya knows that the president hates selfish and arrogant people, which is why she has tried all this time to hide that part of herself. It's exactly because she showed that part of her that she ended up hurting the person who she loves the most. And Kaguya, realizing what she has done, tries to hide that part of herself once more. And we see that Shirogane has the same problem. He explains that he must have collapsed because he's pushing himself to the limits. We get to learn of Shirogane's past and how his mother lost interest in him after he'd failed to achieve test scores. As a result, perhaps this played a huge part in his current belief. Shirogane believes that he will only be recognized, only be loved if he is someone who has accomplished things. This is why he had been working so hard to become a man who can be worthy to stand alongside Kaguya. And here, Shirogane says it the best. To make the person I love fall in love with me, I have to create a persona who's nothing like me.
好きな人に好きになってもらうには自分とは違う自分を作り上げなきゃいけない。
Now, despite Kaguya's questionable methods of eavesdropping, it was here that she realized that they were both doing the same thing. She doesn't want them to continue like this, pretending to be different people and hiding parts of themselves from each other. Kaguya wants to know all of Shirogane, but knows that he won't show that part of himself to her. Kaguya, at the end of the day, wants to be loved for every part of her, and ultimately accept Shirogane for all his flaws. Shirogane, however, disagrees with this. He argues that what if the side you see is something that might make you end up hating the person? What if the things that you end up seeing is the exact opposite of what you fell in love with? And this problem is perfectly displayed during the show. Kaguya only noticed Shirogane because he had challenged her to a duel in the up-and-coming exams. If not for his achievements, Kaguya would have never even noticed him, let alone fall in love with him. However, ironically enough, it wasn't only this. The person that Shirogane fell in love with was the selfless Kaguya who dived in to save a drowning classmate. Shirogane was impressed with the selfless act, but it was later revealed that Kaguya only did so because she calculated it would be beneficial to gain the favor of an important CEO's daughter. You see, both Shirogane and Kaguya fell in love with the other person's persona that they've created. This problem once again comes from, if they fell in love with each other's personas, does that mean that once they remove the mask and be themselves, would the other person still truly love them? Which finally brings me back to the original question. Can you truly be loved for who you are? After the Christmas party, Kaguya and Shirogane both find out that they have secretly bought gifts for each other. After Kaguya gives her gift, Shirogane stubbornly refuses to give his, saying that it was just something that he bought in a hurry. When Kaguya insists on accepting the gift, Shirogane quite literally runs away with it, with Kaguya in hot pursuit. And this little interaction covers the problem quite well. Shirogane is ultimately scared of showing something that's not perfect, anticipating that Kaguya will think it's not good enough and end up falling out of love. However, Kaguya says that she doesn't need anything perfect and desires to not hide anything from each other. The fight continues until finally the present rips open and, hilariously, a kendama falls out. After showing off her skills, Kaguya laughs at Shirogane's decision to gift her this weird present. Shirogane is devastated by this, but Kaguya turns and smiles and asks if she looks disappointed. So, which brings me back. Can you be loved for who you truly are? Shirogane's answer is still no. After all, he still believes that no one can fall in love with someone else's flaws. However, he makes an important distinction that he says in his rap. He says that he's acting out the ideal version of himself. Shirogane essentially argues that yes, he's putting on a mask, but he believes that the mask he puts on is not something fake, but rather the genuine and best version of himself. By taking and accepting that mask as just another part of yourself, you can technically be loved for who you truly are. Kaguya's answer is almost two sides of the same coin. Kaguya understands that personas are important, and it's part of being human. She knows that everybody has a side to themselves that they don't want the other person to see, because ultimately they're afraid of being rejected. Kaguya says that yes, if they didn't have their own personas, they would have probably never met, and she knows that Shirogane is trying hard to become his ideal version for her. However, Kaguya still believes in the idea that you can accept someone for their flaws, because at the end of the day, everybody has an imperfect side to themselves. She believes that to hide that part of yourself is just a little bit sad. Ultimately, what Kaguya wants is something ordinary, and she says to Shirogane that if he's tired, he can drop the bravado. She says it's okay to be vulnerable and to lean on each other. After all, she says, isn't that what a relationship is for?